Hey guys, it's Mr. Stark again, and I wanted to show you a kind of a cool circuit, and it's basic, but it really describes how this transistor is working in this circuit in conjunction with a couple of resistors and an LED. Now, in the first portion of this video, I want to show you the diagram for this circuit. That's fairly basic. I've drawn it in with conventional current flow from positive to negative, even though we know the electrons are really moving from negative to positive. But this helps kind of make my point. I'm going to draw in an electrical switch. And if you look at this, and if you remember the video about transistors, we need to kind of stimulate this transistor. And we're going to apply a small amount of current flow to the base. See, I got these abbreviated. And what we were hoping to do is by stimulating a small amount of current flow, it's going to come through the emitter, stimulate those electrons, so to speak, to gather and close this switch. And if that happens, the other direction, the parallel path of these electrons will make their way through this LED, that's an LED, and we will have a connection between the collector and the emitter. And essentially what happens is when that does happen, we get an imaginary kind of switch to close. I'm going to draw that in there just so lightly so we can kind of see what that is. And when that happens, that closes from collector to emitter and completes the circuit and the LED comes on. But only if I have a small amount of current flow. So this is another lab that's in Moodle, so when you get your electronics kit, you may feel inclined to play around with this. And it shows this same circuit very similarly. I've modified it a little bit to kind of suit our needs. It's got the transistor, it's got a resistor in series with the LED to limit the amount of current flow so we don't pop that LED. And in theory, if we put our finger between these two leads, it'll allow that current flow just enough to kind of stimulate that transistor, if you will, and then allow the connection that we're looking for from the collector to the emitter and get its way over to the LED. So here's another picture in Moodle as far as what that looks like. We know that the negative terminal is hooked up to the emitter. So from our other videos, and if we look, the negative terminal is connected to the emitter. And here's watch what I'm going to do with this. So I'm going to put this camera down for a second. And zoom down. Hopefully you can see everything that's there. What I did first is I'm creating the switch with a piece of wire. And I have to put a little bit of resistance in this circuit because I don't want too much current flow into the base. So if you can see this lead, it's connected to the base of the transistor. If you can see that, it's connected to the base of the transistor. So that lead's just kind of sitting here waiting for me to do something with it. And if I close back on this and close this switch, what I'm going to do is jump through this resistor and my LED comes on. So basically I'm creating the switch that's in my drawing by closing this wire upon the resistor. And you'll notice that I'm completing the circuit simply by putting that resistor in series, and then it goes back home to positive. Not a big deal. But the interesting part is when I pull this resistor out, obviously the LED stops working as we expected because now we have an open circuit. And if I take these two leads, once again, I am working with the conventional current flow with the positive lead up here connected to the yellow wire. The yellow wire, there's a difference in potential between this yellow wire and the orange wire, and when I put my hand on these, the LED comes on. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to adjust this again. Right now I'm closing the circuit through my hands. All I'm doing is putting my hands on this and closing it, and the LED comes on. So I'm using my body as resistance to current flow, so to speak, to allow just enough to get to the base, to stimulate the flow of electrons that are going on inside that transistor so that I will have enough of them to travel from the collector to the emitter. It's a pretty cool circuit. Once again, if we look at what it is on paper, this represented me putting the wire in the breadboard, and then there is a resistor to limit the amount of current flow. And if I did that, that stimulated electron flow, allowing a closure of the switch from the collector to the emitter, completing the circuit back to ground and allowing that LED to come on. But as soon as I disconnected that circuit, as soon as I disconnected this, there's no stimulation, I like to look at it that way, of electrons to cause these guys to kind of jump the gap, you know, through that depletion layer. And we have nothing. Obviously, I have a difference in potential up here, but I've got nothing until this transistor is stimulated. So hopefully you got something out of that video, and we'll look forward to the next one. Thanks.